Hey people, I talk about this minister in that last movie they say means from secret. And in the Latin it says occult. And in the Greek it says akryph. And I told you they say it comes from this base word Nestor that means secret. It was up here in line 6, Psalms 19, line 6. And I looked into it more and I got a better definition for this Nestor here. And in that last movie, I was showing you these reading directional marks and what they mean. And I totally missed this. This has no reading directions. There's 2 lines, 7 and 10, that have no reading directions at all. And so there's only one way to read it, so we can't get these wrong. I thought it would be good to read these. So I'm going to start with this end of 6 here, to get a better idea of what it's saying here in lines 7, 8, 9, and 10. But I want to start with Jerome and talk about the symbolism that you see in all this artwork of Jerome. They say that the Pope back in 300 AD or so had asked Jerome to translate the Greek New Testament into Latin. And why, they say Jerome was a loner. He lived in an old cave. And they say, well, he was a hermit, that he learned some Latin and at least some Koine Greek. So Koine Greek is not Greek. There's only one book written in Koine Greek. It's the Bible. It goes by other names. The Alexandrian dialect, the Biblical Greek, Septuagint Greek, or New Testament Greek. There is nothing else written in this language. And because it's not Greek, it just uses the Greek font, but it's not a Greek language. They say as a student, Jerome engaged in the superficial escapades and sexual experimentation of students in Rome. They say he was first afraid of Christianity and eventually converted. They say he was living as a hermit for his penance. And during this period, he found time to study some Hebrew under the guidance of a converted Jew. And I'm pretty sure the Pope didn't ask him to convert the Old Testament Hebrew into Latin. I'm pretty sure he took that upon himself. But they got a bunch of artwork here for him. And you'll see in this artwork, you'll often see a lion, and not just a lion, but a tame lion. The cardinal attire, the cross, the skull, trumpet, owl, books, and writing material. But they're totally missing this red hat up here. You see him in this red hat with this tame lion. In many photos, he's wearing the hat, or the hat's on the wall, and the tame lion down here. And this lion's tame. You see the red hat again. And this lion's tame because he pulled a thorn out of his paw. You see him here with this red hat in the background. And the skull. I don't see where the red hat's here. But the cross and the skull. The books. The skull and the lion. You see on his statue he's got the skull at his feet. I believe this is that hat here. He's got the tame lion here. Here's that red hat and that tame lion. And the cross and the writing material. You see that hat on the wall up here with the tame lion and the skull. He's got the hat on now and that tame lion back here. And he's got these old Solomon columns. These twisted columns means kinky sex. If you ever see a place with twisted columns on the front of it, that means there's some freaks there. Here's the skull and the tame lion and the cross. That tame lion and the cross. And here's that red hat. And here he is with all his writing materials and pointing at that skull with that Greek Bible here and that Hebrew Bible here. With that skull, steadily concentrating on that skull. Always with the skull. Something's going on with that skull. You see him back here holding his skull. And here he's got that red hat on. And he's pulling the thorn out of the lion's paw. That's how he tamed the lion. And here's one's got them stacked up and makes it easier to read the symbolism. But you see the tame lion and the hat and the cross, and just scratching his head trying to figure out what that book means. He's like me, he's looking at this old book and trying to figure out what the hell it means. But that lion, that's a tame lion, and he tamed it by pulling the thorn out of its foot. And so the lion that was in the book, you see it in all this ancient Egyptian art, that the couch is a lion, and you lie on it. And all this does, it tells me that they were speaking the same English we are today. And not only is it to lie on, but it's a lion. It's not the truth. And the lion had a thorn in it, and he tamed the lion. That was Jerome's job. Rewrite this and try to fix that thorn that's in the lie. We want to keep the lion, but we want to get rid of the thorn. That was Jerome's job, if there even was a real Jerome. You see it in the spelling of his name, the hiero. Hieroglyphics, they say it means the sacred writings, the sacred, the hiero. And here on him was, higher on him was. He had a little higher intelligence. You see that spelling here again, the higher onymus. Here on him was. So I believe this hat and this skull, it represents the order of the rose, the rosy cross. And you see a lot of ancient art with the cross and the rose, that rose mellifluous. But the rose is an ancient symbol for under the rose, and it means whatever. When you come in this door, you see that rose hung above. It means, you're not to talk about what you see or hear here. And you'll see in the Hebrew that they say the rose means the head. And I think sometimes they even say the skull. It's word 7218, rose. And it's spelled to R-A-S-C. But you can tell by the definitions they give it that it means rose, And the semen all rose, oil on top. And a Gillette rose, shave her head, and appear all rose, ashes on her head. They say the base for this is just the R-A-S, and they give it means like head, heads, top, chief, tops, first, beginning, and that's the first word in the Bible, in brosit, which is just more proof that this belonged to a secret cult, and in rose it bear. It's holding the rose, and it means don't talk about what you see or hear. And they say when he was young, he spent a lot of time in the crypts, and with all the skulls on the wall. And it looks like that's what's going on here. He's in the crypt, and if you look at it, you'll see these layers of sedimentary rock up here. This means millions of years of floods and dried out. It was at the bottom of the water at one time. It's raised up now. It's on a different type of rock here. And as you go all the way down to the bottom, you find this ancient well down there. I think he was having problems with the timeline, because while he was in these crypts and seeing these old skulls, the geology wasn't right. This has been here a lot longer than what they're telling us. They say he wrote this, often I would find myself entering into those crypts, deep dug in the earth, with their walls on either side lined with the bodies of the dead. And they say in his ministry in Rome, throughout his epistles, he shows himself to be surrounded by women and united with close ties. It estimated that 40% of his epistles were addressed to someone of the female sex. And at the time he was criticized for it. And that's because at that time the whole church was all fags. They didn't like it that he associated with some women. But it seemed that he eventually learned, to remove the thorn from the lion and under the rose. I'm not sure what Hebrew word they give for the hat. I'll have to catch that later. but there's definitely something that wasn't supposed to be talked about. And this is what they interpret as the minister what we don't talk about. So up in this line 6 up here where it comes up just the base word, you see this base word, the nister, it comes up a bunch of times with different spellings, but just a couple times each way. And only once is this minister. But probably many more times with the others, with the M being the last letter of the word before. But here in these interpretations, they say it means, hidden from the heat. This nester is the hidden, and hid from the heat, and there hidden heat. But this is coming from the fix what from attain. Tain is to get a hold of, to hold, to own, to keep, to obtain. And to tain, this is an N, it's following an N, so it doesn't read as an N here. It reads as the ister. And the istrum come to. Istrum and come to. And you can see here that they've got it totally backwards. Istrum is a noun having to do with the recurrent period of a maximum sexual receptivity in female mammals, often referred to as being in heat. Istrum, a dative plural of Esther. Old English, maybe coming from Old German, meaning female. And so the istrum is from the female, coming from the same place as estrogen. So this isn't the heat, this just come to. And the tain, the estrum come to. And he wanted to hold the female from come to. And then this next line explains this real well. This is Turt, T-U-R-T. And it's the X you see that the Wile E. Coyote is always trying to get the Roadrunner to stop at, because that's where it's going to happen. Turt, the place where it's going to happen. And it's where the word city, the where, you see the city is always the U-R, or sometimes the O-I-R, which O-I reads as a U, is where. The ancient city of Ur means that's where it's happening. The city that never sleeps, where it going on. But actually, this does have a reading directional mark, and this little mark on top of this T here looks like a wave. And it's still used in some Spanish, some Latin, and they say that it means there's a group of letters read in here that you'll have to just know, because there's no way to know what they are. And that's a lie, because that goes against the whole idea of writing, is you're supposed to be able to put your thought on paper without somebody having to read another book to figure out what this word is. But what this little S means, it means take the letter that came before and put it after. So the letter that came before is this Vav. And so this is reading as TU. To where? Going to that place. And the I-E reads as an A. And this is usually, it's just an A-V-E, of the. Your father is the of. And if you're reading in Latin, just take this Domini every time that they say means the Lord, and replace it with a of thee, and it makes this a lot easier to read. The lex of the Immaculata, the justice of the rectus, perceptum of the lucid, the timer of the sanctus, the Judas of the vera. This is where your word verification comes from. The Judas, the judgments, the septa of the domini of and mat is the truth in the Egyptian. That's where they're getting that mat, and omits and tells the truth. So when this isn't surrounded by other letters that change it, like this makes it read, is of, have, but it's just the IE reads the A, the VOV, V of, and E is the of the. But this is, to where, to, and then the VOV, E, T, and the MIM reads the IN, and to where, to wetting, WETEN, the wedding, the wetting. And it's making fun of the wedding, because all you want to do is get your dick wet, And to where, to wetting, them sieve it. What you're going to get out of the deal. Them sieve it nups, your prenuptials. Thou shalt not nup with your neighbor's wife. This is the fish. It's ancient Egyptian. You see, in Egyptian, when they naming animals, they'll put the animal, which the N represents the fish, and then they'll spell it out. Fish. And that's what nups means. Fishing. This is nups right here. This is your nups. You see all the Christians riding around with this on their car, and they have no idea what it means to feed 5,000 with 2 fish. This is a fish. Get your nups. Thou shalt not take your neighbor's wife fishing. The Tor is the place to wetten. Them sieve nups. Add what? Had what, or add is Latin for to. They'll say to what. And had what of, and the E reading here, inum. And this is the EN, the E up here, EN and AM, and the N followed by the E reads with the I in front of it. Enum. And a checkum tifty, a TFTY, tifty. And tifty is where the word nifty come from. And they say this is simple and small, and it's not petty. It's more where the word petite comes from. And you see, this is the mark of pity. Would be in one word, would be the petite, and it means tight, that tight little ass. To check 'em tifty as in nifty or thrifty. A tight little package. Nothing there is wasteful. To where to wetten sieve it nups. Add what of enum, a enema. The enum, checkum tifty. So this one had 3 reading directions in it. And this is major, it changes the meaning of the 2 readings. It changes from the chillin', your children's, CHIL, the chillin', and, she in love. And then this one here, and these here just make it easier to read. And this one here, a little diamond above the R, and this means the opposite of this. It means take the letter after and read it before, and these just make it a little easier to read. I ignore them most of the time. They actually weren't there in the beginning, were added later, but it makes it easier to read this as EVER, ever, and of, ever, them air, ever the mare tunum, TUIOI, reading as a U, a tunum. So this peculiar, this is where the word peculiar comes from, the PQU, and actually has to do with the herd, out of the ordinary, odd, strange, and it's one picked out of the herd. It's all put together in one word with this little markup here. So it's not just a PQ, a pick woody, a pick wood, and the double I, the first one reaches the H. A pick would have his selection, the peculiar, but it's from the herd, and it's a pick, and then you move the P over, or the F, F-U-D, the pick foodie, the pick pooty, some of that pooty tang. But I think the best way to read it is just the pick and would and have, double I, H and I-E, reading it A-V-E. The pick would have, the one you selected. And the pick would have in his, H-I-S, his remissum, a chillin' mix what of ever mare atunum. And so his remissum is like to remittance. Remit is to put your application in, to remit. But a remiss is an unauthorized, an application that has some false information in it. To remit some false information, remiss. And it's reading, the R-I-M, and so the second M reading is I-S, I-S-M, remissum. And the pick would he have his remissum, to put in your false information. The chillin' mix what of ever mare tunum. You want to get every mare. But this has a lot more meaning. It's from air and tunum. From air, tunum means, every living thing. Everything that runs on air. From air, tunum. The pick would he have his remissin. Chillin' mix what of ever mare tunum. But what this is actually talking about is before you got married, you had to go in front of the king. Your wedding night, the king was the first one at your wife. He got it first. Your oldest child was actually the king's child. That's why we all have this connected DNA. And it's every air from air tunum. You're tuning up the heredity. And you see more of that when you start reading into the different reading marks, reading different ways. You see more what that's talking about. So this one has 1, 2, 3, and 4 reading direction changes. But you see how this little S is hung over the side now, and what this means is reread the last 2 letters. And so it's, either and here, H-R-E, either here. And it's a rat of either here, amid, amongst, amid, a tel, atom, sept, and then backwards and forwards. And the I-E reading as a sept of, and then the H and the I reading as A again. A sept of have. The judge, he's on the top. And a rat of either. And so what happened is, as he's been doing this, it turns out that he's the father of all the brides and grooms. That's why all them British had them fucked up teeth. They were all inbred. And a rat of either here amid tell had 'em sept. You will accept what I administer. The minister was down in line 12. And tell at 'em, and tell at them, Adam, tell the man, and tell at 'em a sept who have omit its dick which two. Omit its dick which two. And this is playing on the word. It's also a tick stick. A tick stick. A tick stick is something to use to measure irregular curves, irregular shapes. If you're trying to fit something together, and it doesn't have 90-degree angles. You use a tick stick. But if you're going to measure up some ass, you might as well use your dick for a tick stick, and omits a dick witch too. And then this line 10 is easy. Again, it doesn't have any directional markings or letters in it. It's got these couple diamonds here, just to let you know that you're reading that I before the D here. And so all that inbreeding, is income in the I. Income demise. The double M, this read is a I. I-Z-E. Income demise. A bump. A bumps. B-U-M-P-Z. A bumpser bumped. B-U-M-T. The bumps are bumped, it's more desired than gold, fine gold, and than much and sweeter than also honey, to consummate the marriage. And income demise, bumps are bumped of them. Income demise, the bumps are bumped of them. And then, the S reading on the other side of the B too. But, the double M, the second one reading is a I, in id. And bumps are bumped of amids in sun. Amids in sun, amid. The T and the D switch up. So not only out there, in the sun in front of God and everybody, but amid. Amidst in sun and put its up 'em. The sun put its up 'em. Income demise bumps are bumped of amids in sun puts up 'em. And so this is what boys think. They think this is more to be desired than gold, fine gold, that much and sweeter than also honey and the drippings of a honeycomb. That's what we think about ass. And then 11's pretty easy to read. It's got this one reading directional. And if we ignore it as if we're reading A words backwards, which there's none, it's just the game of Dickenser in 'em. The Dickenser in 'em, a Bessemer mocking. The Bessemer is the broom you use to sweep this old spirits out of the pot when you're cooking up a new dish, The Bessemer mocking. And so you're in and twisting around like you would remove the spirits from a spell pot. And if you're reading it with the mark, it's the game. It just means the kidding. And joking, the kidding. And the game kidding of Dickenser in 'em. Bessemer mock baron. And you know what it's talking about on 12, because it's plain, the shag. The shag, what? A mini vivin, the little life in, your little sperms, the M-I-N-I, the mini and a V-I-V, a life, the little life. In minister, and to administer, to put it in, and I talked about that movie yesterday, and I'll put this in the same folder. You can watch that. But, that's where your word minister come from. It means to put your dick in it. In a minister, a tinking, to tune it up. To minister a tinking. And I'm going to cut this off here. Good day.